The biggest benefit we are sold on when buying a home is a myth.
Is the ultimate escalator to building wealth. The biggest mistake millennials are making is not buying their first home. You want to stay poor, you want to live paycheck to paycheck, keep renting. If you want to build real financial security, real wealth for your lifetime, then you need to buy a home.
Yeah, all that stuff they just said, I don't think that is true. In fact, the math says that it is not true either. But why? Let's go ahead and break it down. The problem starts with how homeowners do the math when they sell their home and they call it an investment. All right, so let's start there. The median home today is right around $400,000. So let's just make the math easy and say you buy a home for $400,000, which is right around what I paid for my house. Yes, I own a home and I can still criticize home ownership. It's a thing called nuance. So you buy a home for $400,000 and it doubles in value for $800,000. That is pretty cool. You sell it. How much money did you make? You make $400,000. That is what most homeowners do because they know what they paid for and they obviously know what they sold it for. And they say, look, I made all this money. This is really cool. This is why I bought a home. I can't do this with an apartment. This is the point. Equity, ownership, investment, blah, blah, blah. Except there are several things, but there was one really important thing that you completely missed in that entire equation. The first thing was interest. That money was not free. Unless you have $400,000 in cash, a lot of that was paid in interest, and that is a cost that you did not factor in. You didn't actually pay just $400,000. I mean, look at people who are paying student loans or credit card debt or anything else. Once there's an interest rate attached, you know for a fact you pay more than what the item cost. I mean, even on my mortgage, it says I'm going to pay $500 and something thousand, right? But here's where it gets even more interesting. The median homeowner actually sells their house in year 13. Well, last I checked, the regular mortgage is actually 30 years, which means if you're selling your house in year 13, most of that money goes where? It goes to the interest. So most of that money you're just paying to the bank. Most people say that renters throw money away. Yeah, a lot of that. Not all, but a lot of that is going to interest. So let's look at the math now. When you factor in interest for 13 years, because again, that is the median. That is the median when people are selling their homes. So say you start out with $400,000, all right? So you're buying the home at $400,000, all right? So you put down $40,000, you have a $360,000 mortgage at 5% interest, and then you are selling at $800,000 at 5%, okay? So you pay 5% for the mortgage. That means in year 13, $213,000 would have gone to interest. So instead of you making $400,000, you actually only made $187,000. Now, before you say, wait, $187,000 is way more money than what a renter would get, so on and so forth. Well, the title of this video is not renting versus owning. I never said that renting was better or anything like that. You said that, not me. Okay, so let's continue. Yeah, $187,000 is better than zero. I mean, most things are better than zero, but we're not done yet. $187,000, when you take that and see what your annual profit would be, it actually works out to be just 3% per year. That's it. A 3% gain per year is what you would get through year 13. That is not an impressive investment. If I told you, hey, I'm your financial advisor and I think I can get you about 3% per year, is that good? That is, at least in 2025, that's a basic savings account today. That's not an impressive investment. Okay, now if you're someone that says, well, I don't buy my house for an investment, I'm someone who wants to pass on a property for my kids, I'm just here because I want a place to live. Cool, I agree with you on that. That is why I bought. If I make money, great. If I don't, I really don't care. I just want a place to chill, to live, and to have my kids run around. That is why I bought my house. It is not an investment for me. Quick time out. I know we've been talking a lot about investing today. However, if you don't know where to start or you haven't started yet, I have a free guide on how you can buy your first stock in just 20 minutes. To get that free guide, check out the link right here. All right, back to the video. But from an investment perspective, if 3% is what a savings account is getting you, the stock market has averaged right around 7% after inflation. We've talked about stocks on this channel that in the last 6 months alone have gotten 30, sometimes 40%. So from an investment perspective, no, it has not been what most people expect it to be. The investment company Credit Suisse had did a study way back in 2018 and showed that the US housing market had gained over 118 years 0.3% average annual return, which is obviously not great. Now, after showing you all that math, here's what people get mad at me. During this entire video, I never said that buying a home was better than renting or vice versa. I never said not to buy a home. But here's the thing. If you say that, hey, I owe you $400,000 and then I only give you 187, are you going to be upset, or are you going to say, well, yeah, 187,000 is still a lot of money and just walk away? No, there is a big difference between those two numbers. That is the point. Okay, the point is we're sold and told in American culture in general that it is this magical, huge investment, and then when you do the numbers, it's like 3%. Like that is the problem, right? But every time I bring it up, I get comments like this, assuming I'm just gonna rent my entire life, even though I own a home. Okay, I mean, like, what is this? None of this actually makes sense, but these are the things that happen. Just because I say, hey, I think the math is off, or let's look at this a bit differently, people always magically blame renters for something, right? Or say, well, it's better than renting automatically. Well, we don't know that actually. They would have to do the math based on their situation and see how that thing may compare, because yes, market does matter. Like where you bought your house in the country does matter, and when you bought your house in the country does matter. If you bought your house before 2000, it is likely a whole lot cheaper than what it is today. That is extremely important. Someone trying to buy a $400,000 house today might not get the return as somebody who bought their house in 1967 when houses were $30,000. So when I say it might not be the best investment today, realize what was said. Okay, realize what was said. I didn't say it might not be a good purchase. That's different, because an investment means that I am trying to get a profit out of it. That is a difference. Okay, a purchase and a profit are two separate things. Okay, now I need to purchase something to profit from it, but when I'm buying a car, I'm not trying to buy it and make more money from it. Okay, I'm just trying to buy it and call it a day. Those are two separate things. And maybe I don't make money from buying a house. That doesn't mean that renting is worse or that renting is better. In fact, that's not in the equation at all. More importantly, regardless of how much I make from any home purchase, renting is not in this equation at all. Okay, as a former teacher, if I sit down with you and say, hey, your answer to this problem number one was wrong, and you say, well, Johnny can't read, I ain't asking about Johnny, I'm asking about you. And I'm saying, hey, I don't think this part of your equation was right. We talking about, you said that it was 400,000 and it was actually 187. And I think in American culture, every time you bring up home ownership, we automatically compare those two things to renting, saying you can't live in an index fund, you can't live in a stock. If you're renting, you're wasting money, so on and so forth. Not exactly, right? Because if the main purpose is to have a roof over your head, it doesn't truly matter, right? But we're sold that the main benefit between the two is the fact that you have equity, that it is a true investment, that you will make money, that the housing market doesn't actually crash, which we obviously know is not true. So when you do the math, does it actually make sense? And that is the key. We're going to see who watches this part of the video. When you do the math, does it actually make sense for you? That is what you are going to have to sit down and truly do. Wherever you are, whenever you are, you need to sit down and say, hey, this is what I'm going to pay for the house. This is where houses in my area typically grow, and whether or not that makes sense. You're going to need to sit down and say, here's how much I'm spending. Is making money from this purchase important to me or not? And whether or not all that stuff fits in your budget. That is how you should go throughout that process. Because for some people, as I mentioned, it's not going to matter. One other note I will also add, if you are someone who pays off the mortgage, you stay in the home for 30 years, which again, the median homeowner does not. But if you do, you stay in that house, you pay the mortgage off, it does benefit you more. And in The Millionaire Next Door, it did say that the majority of millionaires stay in that house. That's their forever home. Now, I bought one house, I prefer to stay in this house until the end of times. But seriously, I would prefer to like stay in this house and pay it off and all kind of stuff. We'll see if that happens. I don't know if that's realistic, right? One other note, if you are someone who adds extra to your mortgage payment or makes bi-weekly payments to pay off your mortgage early, that is something that changes the math in your favor. That is what I do. I make bi-weekly payments. Okay, so I pay off my mortgage just a tiny bit faster than what the chart that I showed you earlier would suggest. Your interest rate would change this math as well. So the math does matter. Also, if you are someone who you got your forever home the first time around and you intend to stay the entire 30 years and pay off the mortgage, then it definitely benefits you a whole lot more than someone who stays there and pays off most of the interest and then leaves. Okay, so when you buy and sell, how much interest you pay and how much you cut into the principal, that is the point. That is the point here. And I think that is the thing that most people don't understand or don't realize either, is that, especially for previous generations, I think this is crucial. Previous generations, like my parents, where they lived in their houses. I mean, my parents bought their home, especially my dad. They bought their home the year I was born, and they still got it. Okay, my mom bought her house in 2006, and she still got it. So I think in the next like 10 years or so, it'll be paid off. There you go, right? But that generation didn't really move across country as much. My generation, millennials, will hop jobs every 2 to 3 years, and we will move across country often. I've lived in multiple states since I graduated in 2012. That math doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us, right? Or for this generation, and we'll see what happens for the next generation. So when you buy and where you buy is absolutely going to matter. But the myth, right, that it is the absolute best investment, I don't think that's the case anymore. It was when houses were cheaper and people stayed put and you could have a job and sit there for 20 or 30 years. That's not the case anymore. So do the math and see where the math takes you. Then you can answer that question for yourself. But I'm gonna tell you this, leave renters out of this, okay? This just between us, all right? Y'all always pick on them and say they're not doing X, Y, and Z. Let them people alone. Okay, but here's the thing. If you want to know more about investing and my thoughts on home ownership and everything in between, you want to check out this video right here.